Mr. President, I want to talk for a few moments about income tax filing season. I realize, Mr. President of the Senate, that you would probably prefer to be condemned to hearing OJ jokes for the rest of eternity than to hear me talk about federal income tax filing, but it's important for Americans and my people back in Louisiana because we have a new deduction for people who have uninsured losses from natural disasters. And it's really important in my state because many of my people have suffered damages for which they did not receive insurance payments from Hurricanes Laura, Delta, Ida, and Francine. We passed this new deduction, Mr. President, in December. It's called the Federal Disaster Tax Relief Act. And what it does is following. It changes the law. It now says that if you're a victim of a natural disaster like a hurricane, and you have a loss that's not paid for by your insurance, you can now deduct off your income tax, dollar for dollar, any property damage, uninsured property damage, in excess of $500. Why is that important? Well, under the old rules, Mr. President, you were limited in your deduction. You could only deduct your uninsured property losses that were in excess of 10% of your adjusted gross income. And I know that sounds complicated, and it is kind of complicated. But rather than belaboring the point, the bottom line is this. As a result of this bill that we all worked on and that we passed, you can now deduct more. And this is the first time people will be able to do this. So let me say it again. If you had an uninsured property loss, you can now deduct any of that loss above $500. This also applies in addition to the standard deduction. So if you take the standard deduction, as most Americans do, you can take this additional deduction on top of it. I'd also like to point out, Mr. President, to all Americans, but especially to my people back home in Louisiana, that this tax deduction is retroactive. It goes all the way back to 2020. So that means that going back to 2020, if you had uninsured losses, you can now deduct them if they exceed $500. And I know folks are thinking, well, I already filed my income taxes for 2021 and 2022 and 2023. You can file an amended return. It's very simple to do. You just file an amended return that says there's been a change in the law and I'm entitled to have this higher deduction, and therefore the federal government owes me money, and therefore please send me my check. So I wanted to make sure that Americans knew about this new tax provision that we passed.